I think you ought to give your name if you're gonna introduce yourself to the jury, but I'll leave that up to you.
All right. We ready to go? May it please the court, counsel. Sometimes life is more painful than death. This is a case about a broken neck and broken dreams, a shattered neck and shattered dreams. This is Ron Coker, to my left, members of the jury. In July 2009, Mr. Coker, then a sophomore at Mythical City High School, attended the annual Z-Mart Cup charity event. Now this was a big event for the city as Z-Mart hosted this event to encourage employee morale and build employee morale. And at that event, there was this obstacle course. And at that obstacle course, which involved a potato sack run, a balance beam, a tire agility test, and a water slide at the end. Now the focus of this obstacle course was to go as fast as you can, and the winning team would then have the ability to pick a charity of their choice so that Z-Mart could donate that money to charity. Now Z-Mart and the other defendant in this case, Dr. Hopp, who I'll talk about in a few moments, treated Mr. Coker for injuries he sustained that day. I want to talk to you about that obstacle course. It's the plaintiff's position that as a result of an improper and negligent design of that course, the inability of the participants to practice the course, poor or inadequate instruction for the participants and the Z-Mart employees that ran that course caused the injuries sustained by Mr. Coker. And these injuries, as you will see throughout the course of this trial, are catastrophic. This case is about a young man whose dreams will never be fulfilled again. During this obstacle course, there was a tarp set up like a slip and slide. And during this obstacle course, the participants came off the slalom run and had to dive under this tarp, or dive onto the tarp, under these ribbons. And as you'll see here, there were two people from Z-Mart, one with a hose keeping this tarp wet, and the other employee of Z-Mart throwing water. Now you're going to hear testimony that's somewhat inconsistent, but I think you'll find that this employee with the bucket was throwing 5-gallon buckets of water, dirty water, muddy water, towards the participants, and in this case, Ron Coker, while he dove under those sticks. And as a result of that bucket throwing of water with no goggles on, with no helmet on, that they didn't tell the participants to have, Mr. Coker turned his head to avoid dirty water in his mouth and in his eyes, and he hit his head on the ground. And he didn't just hit his head. You're going to hear witness testimony that says he hit it so hard, other people could feel it. As a result of Mr. Coker hitting his head as hard as he did, part of his neck was shattered. The part of the neck called the cervical vertebrae. And there are 7 spinal processes in your neck that protect the spinal cord. Mr. Coker shattered what's called C5. After the event, Mr. Coker had tremendous pain in his neck. The next day, he went to the hospital where he was reviewed by his family physician, Dr. Kelly, who immediately said, you have to go to the emergency room. Mr. Coker went to the emergency room, was seen by Dr. Hopp, another defendant in this case. And on the 6th day of July, 2009, Dr. Hopp operated on Mr. Coker's neck to remove the fragments that were contained in the spinal canal. This was a very sensitive surgery, and what Dr. Hopp did was put a plate in Mr. Coker's neck. He removed the damaged vertebrae. They took out a piece of the iliac crest, which is a part of the hip, and they took out bone out of there and grafted it into Mr. Coker's neck to stabilize that spot in his neck. Otherwise, there was the potential for death. I think you'll hear that in the testimony, and you'll hear that he potentially could have become a quadriplegic, which is when you lose use of all four extremities. Members of the jury, at the end of this trial, I don't think there'll be any doubt. I don't think there'll be any reason not to conclude that Z-Mart was responsible for the injuries of Mr. Coker. Am I up? Okay.
If you're done, you're done.
I'm done.
Oh, we forgot to elect a timekeeper.
I'll keep it.